VSG Easy LFS Manager. Hello and welcome to presentation video of Easy LFS Manager. And let's start with the name. The full name of this software is Valsogard Easy LFS Manager, or VSG Easy LFS Manager. And I would say that the name is pretty accurate when it comes to describing what this software actually does, and it helps you easily manage projects that require LFS. Now, what is LFS? LFS is an extension on top of Git. And what is Git? Well, for those who don't know, Git is a version source control system or software, and it helps individuals, teams and companies to track history and status of their projects and their files. And the solution that we have created is called Easy LFS Manager. And what is actually Easy LFS Manager? Well, it's a GUI, which means that it's graphical user interface, and it's also, just like Git LFS, it's an extension to Git. And this combines Git and Git LFS and fills in this gap, which would make working with LFS system difficult for people who are not programmers. So this system, this software is made to be easy to use. VSG Easy LFS Manager. What it actually does? Well, it tackles and solves a couple big problems that are associated with high costs of hosting Git repositories, and also difficulty when it comes to working with LFS system or files that require LFS. And let's tackle the first problem first. The software is built on top of Git. It has its graphics user interface, or GUI for short, and it's making the best of GitHub's free plan. GitHub's free plan allows you to have unlimited repositories for unlimited number of collaborators, and the repositories do have hard limit of 100 gigabytes, but it is by far the best offer out there. Most of the hosting solutions or platforms offer you like 5 gigabytes per repository limit, or 10, sometimes it's even smaller. And Git is not used only for Unreal Engine projects. Actually, it's the opposite. Git system has been there for like decades by now. And GitHub in particular is very comfortable to work with Unreal Engine, because it allows you this flexibility. It allows you to have repositories that are bigger. And if you have ever worked, and you probably did, worked on Unreal Engine projects, you would know that it's very easy to increase the size of your project just by adding a couple of assets packs. And it's very, very common for artists, level designers, animators, etc. And if you are taking care of visual part, and you are not gonna have just programming, coding part, then you're definitely gonna need that space for assets that can take like even couple of hundreds of megabytes if you have very big textures, or you are importing some big assets such as movies, etc. But anyway, coming back to the GitHub's free plan, however, it has another limitation, which has to do with large files. And large files can be interpreted differently, but in GitHub's terminology, any file that is bigger than 10 megabytes is tracked and registered as a big file, as a large file. And however, GitHub does allow you to push, or should I say upload, files that are up to 100 megabytes in size. However, any file that is bigger than 10 megabytes, it's going to ask you at its first submit or push, it's going to ask you, this file is bigger than 10 megabytes. Are you sure that you want to track this file? And you would, of course, say yes. And what about the files that are bigger than 100 megabytes? That's when the situation starts to get tricky. GitHub by default does not allow you to push files that are bigger than 100 megabytes. It's platform's limitation. However, they do offer something that is called LFS. Now, LFS is an extension on top of Git, like I said before, and it's meant to track and manage files that are, well, large. LFS stands for large file storage, and as the name says, it does as the name says. It deals with large files. Now, like I said, large files can have different definition, and if your project does not have any files that are bigger than 100 megabytes, well, then you can use Git just fine by default. You don't have to deal with LFS, and GitHub platform is going to allow you to submit files, to push files that are up to 100 megabytes. Well, in most cases this is gonna be just fine. In rare cases, however, there are cases, although they are rare, in rare cases you will need a support for files that are bigger than 100 megabytes when it comes to Unreal Engine assets, or for example, you have some raw assets that you don't necessarily have imported inside Unreal, but you have to have them inside your project's repository. And if those files are bigger than 100 megabytes, then you're definitely going to need LFS. And what our software actually does, it fixes some of the problems that have to do with default way of how Git is treating larger files. Now let me explain. Like I said, Git allows you to push files up to 100 megabytes. However, if you want to push files that are bigger than 100 megabytes, then you will need LFS. However, there is this problem with LFS's default configuration. Whichever file is bigger than that is bigger than 10 megabytes, it's going to track it. Any file that is bigger than 10 megabytes is going to be tracked by LFS. So we have this range for files that are between 10, so that are bigger than 10 but smaller than 100 megabytes, that are still tracked by LFS system, but in reality they could be tracked by Git's default config, so without LFS. And you might be thinking, well, what's the problem? Why we can't just track everything or anything with LFS? Well, here's the catch. Apart from some technical specifics, the main reason would be reducing cost. Like I said, Git allows you to push files up to 100 megabytes. Well, when it comes to LFS, GitHub by default offers you a data quota of 1 gigabyte for free for LFS files. So basically it allows you to have a total size of your large files up to 1 gigabyte, which is okay. However, these files, those files that are bigger than 10 megabytes but smaller than 100 megabytes, those files don't have to necessarily be tracked by LFS. They can be tracked by Git without LFS. So any file that is bigger than 10 and smaller than 100 megabytes is counting against your quota. And in practice, this leads to very fast usage of your free quota of 1 gigabyte. And that's why we've created this solution, to reduce cost and make things easier. So with our solution, this allows you to track files up to 100 megabytes with Git, which is free, and those files that are bigger than 100 megabytes, you can track them by LFS, but not all the files that are bigger than 10. So we've basically made it possible to configure this threshold. By default, we have configured it to be 100 megabytes, but our software solution allows you to tweak this threshold for whatever reason that you want to do. Maybe you're using different platform which offers different LFS threshold, or for whatever reason. We are keeping it at 100 megabytes but by default, but it can be changed. And one important thing to say is this software solution is primarily made but not exclusive for Unreal Engine projects. You can definitely use it with other software, Unity, whatever game engine that you're using, or if you're using software such as 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, Houdini, even Premiere, Adobe package, whatever. Like, if you can use Git, you can use this software solution as an extension as well. And yeah, but as we are focusing on developing for Unreal Engine, and we have created this software solution because we were encountering this problem ourselves. We wanted to have lower costs of hosting Git repositories, and we wanted to make it simple, because in other cases, programming people, when I say programming people, those people who are very proficient with the Git, they would go inside config files and they would configure some of the files that they want specifically to be tracked. However, even for them, this makes their life easier. No matter how proficient are you with Git, this makes your life easier because it is automatic. And what it does, the directories that you assign to it, that you configure, it's going to search that directory and find files that are above the threshold that you've set up in config, in settings. And like I said, by default, it's set to 100 megabytes. And any file that is above 100 megabytes, it's going to be set up and added to LFS track list. And by default, you can't change LFS's threshold it had to be done in this way, and we have found a solution for that.